There's this word that our culture likes to throw around quite a bit, and this word is narcissism. No doubt you've heard of this word. It's been applied to our political leaders, to the angry lady at the store, and usually deals with an inflated sense of one's own self-worth. I want to share with you guys a story of a time where I met an honest-to-God narcissist. At the beginning of last year, I was contacted by a sailing crew that was running charters out of the Bahamas. He had invited me out to South Carolina, where he lived with his wife, to come and help work on the boat and get it ready for the crystal blue waters of NASA. Now, part of the sort of interview stage, there was a series of 2 phone calls, and the first one was the general interview, get to know each other, and the second one was whether or not I got the job. And so I went in, I did the call. The interesting thing is he started talking and never once asked me a question. He talked my ear off about 1,000 different things that I was going to experience. He told me that he was a personal friend of Johnny Depp and that there was a very good chance of me meeting him. He also told me that, pirate goodies were just laid out all over the place, that I would find swords, bottles, all sorts of artifacts that I could take home with me. He painted this picture as if they were just everywhere, out to grab, that there was so much that they almost had no value. He told me all sorts of wonderful things, and honestly, looking back, I really ought to have known better. Because when I first saw him, I wasn't exactly greeted by a legendary captain. I was greeted by an older man with tattered pants and a very worn green sweatshirt. Snot dripping from his nose. Which also kind of a side note, he wore 2 things. He wore those brown tattered pants and underwear. It was either one or the other. I never saw him wear anything else, come to think of it. Only those 2 things. Well, much like the interview, when I first walked off the plane and I met with him, he talked about himself. He talked about himself on the way to the car, in the car, on the way home. And as long as I was there, he was talking about himself. Never once stopping to ask me a question. As a side note, when we got into the car, he slid his hand inside of his sweatshirt pocket and pulled out a Glock 19. And he slides it underneath his seat. This guy, for whatever reason, thought it was appropriate to bring a live firearm into an airport. I don't have any words. I really don't. Anyways, I learned his entire life story the first night of meeting him. I was told stories of abuse, of drug running, of shootouts on the high seas, but there was one thing he needed to make sure that I knew, that he was the best captain around, that nobody else could do it like he could, that these yuppie captains with their college degrees, my fault for doing it underneath a tree, that these yuppie captains with their college educations and their certifications, they don't know what they're doing, and that none of them could do it like he could. And then this is exactly how it went. He'd be like, these yuppie captains, they have no idea what they're doing. They can't do it like me. They can't do it like my crew. We are the best around. And we're very humble about it. I mean, really? Really? Yeah? You're humble about it, huh? Now, I must be an idiot, because I actually believed him up until this point. I mean, in my defense, I had no reason not to. I just met the guy. It wasn't until I had met his first mate did that image begin to fall apart. He told me that his first mate, a local Bahamian, was the best captain in the Bahamas. And you know what? Fair enough. He was extraordinarily good at what he did. I mean, he knew the boating industry inside and out. Not only that, but he was extraordinarily humble about it. Yeah, I'm not sure where he got that from, because he was one of the most arrogant people I had met. Most arrogant person I've met in a long time. When I first met him, he didn't really even bother to ask my name. He told me who he was and then began the long list of accomplishments. And this entire time, even in the months sailing with them, I could not get a word in edgewise. If I had a story I wanted to share or a joke to tell, I had a max maybe about 3 words before I was cut off. There was no having a conversation. There was only being talked at. Anyways, with the help of some of his extended family, the captain I mean, it wasn't even 2 days before I began to see through the lies of the Jedi. Over dinner one night, while the captain was in the hospital, you see, earlier in that year, he had deeply injured his knee. I mean, ripped it to shreds. And he was instructed by the doctor to stay home and rest, to not put any weight on it, and certainly not to do any work. He wasn't going to let some dumb, yuppie doctor tell him what to do. So he immediately got back to work and started walking around on it, the day after his surgery. It's like, oh, these yuppie doctors, they don't know what they're talking about. Look, it's already been a week, and my leg is already better. Well, I ended him back in the hospital for another surgery to, do it all over again. Let that be a lesson to everybody. Listen to your doctors. I don't get this sort of narrative that they don't know what they're talking about. You don't become a doctor without knowing what you're talking about. Yeah, just let that be a lesson to all of us. Listen to our doctors. Like, I'd even need to say that. Anyways, it was at that dinner that I began to realize that I had been lied to about a great many things. I shared with the family some of the expectations that I had built up, only to come to find out that 90% of it was a big bag of baloney, fibs. And the thing is, it's like, now I'm being told two different things from two different sets of people. Now, who am I going to believe? Because I have no idea. I've been lied to up until this point. So the mediator between the two was the first mate. Knew him as long as anyone else. And he even confirmed to me that he had lied about most of the stuff that I heard. So the captain had told me that the first mate was a street rat, homeless, that he didn't have any parents, and that he took him in at a young age and taught him sailing and gave him the remarkable career that he had. I told him this, and the first mate goes, "What? My mother's rich. I became a sailor because I was bored and I had nothing else to do, and having a little bit more money was better than not having a little bit more money." Amazing, right? And he would lie about really weird things too. Like, one day while we were sailing, he told me to be on the lookout for a military helicopter that was going to drop off a package. Like, why lie about that? Like, as a general rule of thumb, if you lie about something, you typically don't want the truth to come out. You don't want the person to find out that you've lied to them. And certainly not in the way that all it would take for someone to find out that you've lied to them is by waiting until the end of the day. I mean, he would lie about weird things. The other thing that he would do, and this kind of more ties into the whole narcissism thing, and this is kind of a trait of captains in general. They do this. I don't know why. But he had to make sure that I knew that I was completely incompetent, no idea what I was doing, and that the thousands of dollars that I had spent on my education up until that point didn't mean anything out here. He had to make sure that I knew that. Everything I said was wrong. Would drill that into my brain on a daily basis, really. And that he was the only source of knowledge on board that boat. That's pretty much an attribute of every captain, though. I sailed under this Norwegian fella who, no matter what you tried to do, you were always wrong. And then he had to come back and correct it, and you were such a burden. And why were you even on this boat in the first place? I sailed underneath a Danish fella who was like that, who didn't even bother coming out of his cabin, and treated us like we were stupid and such a burden to be around. So much so that he would just hide in his cabin all the livelong day. I don't know, this odd authoritarian sort of dictator who lives on the boat. I don't understand it, but whatever. This captain I sailed under had a very odd vendetta against people with college educations. Like this one night, there was a group of us that were all, and I don't even remember what it was, but for some reason we had to undo ratchet straps, and none of us really knew how to do it. And for me personally, we never used ratchet straps growing up. We always just used rope. But this is exactly how it went. He would get up and he would walk around and he would stick his finger in all of these people's faces, very accomplished people, by the way, and go, college education, college education, college education, college education. None of you know how to use ratchet straps. I am honored that it's me, the one who hasn't even graduated from high school, is the one to do this task. I am honored. One of those people that he stuck his finger in the face had designed and ran the Patriot missile system that protects our country. Another one was a multi-millionaire businessman. And so I guess, I don't know, really, he hated them. He hated people. He loved to use this word yuppie. And I had to look it up afterwards because I knew the word existed. I just had no idea what the word meant. Well, regardless, after that night, I learned to hate him quick. And this is within the first week. I began my plan on getting out of there. So We got on board the ship, and I told him that I was switching gears and that by the end of the month I would be gone. Well, that night he handed me a plate for dinner, and typically it was kind of more of a potluck style. You would go and grab what you wanted, but no, tonight he handed me the meal personally. And I spent 3 long days and 2 sleepless nights throwing up and defecating hither and thither. So gross, so nasty. Yeah, he was petty like that. Overall, he was a very strange and deeply disturbed individual. He was also very gross too. This one time he ate dead skin off the top of my foot. This other time, he rubbed butter underneath his armpits before putting it into a dish and serving it to the customers. Like I said, a deeply, deeply disturbed individual who a very, very extreme sense of his self-worth. He largely killed my love for sailing. Well, no, that's not true. Fiji killed my love for sailing. I would say he put the nail in the coffin. For sure, though. It's been a year since that happened, and I do find myself thinking about it. I definitely learned a lot about myself. One of the things that I learned is in my future travels, I need to have autonomy over my life. I need to be able to go and do what I need to do. If I needed to get away from somebody, I needed to really just get away from them as quick as I could. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Helps this channel grow. And if you had a similar story like that, please post in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers, you guys.